I have a film theory for you. A film theory that will have you looking at so many of the movies and TV series over the years in a whole new understanding. Today we're going to be looking at Star Wars, with 3 trilogies, 2 movies squeezed in there to answer some fan questions and to settle some arguments, 4 separate series with multiple seasons in each series, and a bunch of video games, like so many video games. The question that everyone has is, why doesn't everyone just use light speed torpedoes? The holo maneuver is 1 in a million, they say. Is it? Is it really that hard to line up a barrel of a gun with a target on a ship or even from a stationary cannon? Some of these ships, when they're not going through light speed, are just hanging out in one spot and deploying smaller ships to do all the work. The commander ship would be staying up in orbit and sending smaller ships down to do all the hard work. So if there was a planetary defense weapon set up, then you could easily eliminate these humongous ships that are deploying so many smaller ships. All you gotta do is strap a bunch of steel to a hyperdrive and shoot it at the enemy. And really, you don't even have to do that. You can just use the old ships that nobody wants anymore. Let me just do some simple calculations. Let me see here. E equals mc squared. The power of an atomic bomb. Yeah, anything moving at light speed is going to do a significant amount of damage. The answer to that is we're not going to see any light speed cannons because every battle would be over so quickly because it's such an incredible weapon. So the real question that everyone is asking is, what is the future of Star Wars? There is no doubt that there is a lot of material to go over here, and it's been released over a few decades. So after going over all these different series and movies, there is a trend of Star Wars we can see emerging. Same kind of trend that we can see in other shows. And I can imagine some are already commenting, Star Wars is not like other shows. Star Wars is in a universe all of its own. So to that, I say all of these shows are in the real universe that are being affected by real people writing the scripts. The trend that has emerged from these decades of writing the same shows is called one-upmanship. For those who are not familiar with the term, it's as follows. As implied by the term itself, this is when someone is trying to one-up someone else. Most of us indulge in one-upmanship from time to time. It is part of normal interaction, so it is not really tiresome until people do it excessively. So we don't just find this one-upmanship in Star Wars, we find one-upmanship in other long-running shows, and by the end of this video, you will know where Star Wars will be going in the future. When we look back at Star Wars to the beginning trilogy, we can see that most of the Force users have the powers of telekinesis, mind manipulation, some Force lightning, and then there's some Force ghost. Moving to the next trilogy, we can see more powers emerging, such as seeing things before they happen and the prophecies, so basically seeing the future. Then we can see that there is Force lightning absorption and long distance wireless connection between people. Then everything else is just more telekinesis on a bigger scale, like bigger jumps, bigger things being picked up, and bigger things being thrown, and then there's just more things being thrown at one time, or just like faster speeds and stuff like that. So you're just gonna see a whole lot of this one-upmanship with those kind of abilities. Moving on to the third trilogy, we can see new Force abilities such as getting a vision from touching an object, Force healing, transferring souls between living beings, well, at least the attempt at that. Still don't know really how that Emperor's soul got into that clone. Just look at the jump in the Force abilities in the trilogies. We can see that Force Jump or Telekinesis is now being upgraded to Force Float. You can clearly see Rey floating here. And then we can see the connection between people over long distances has upgraded to being able to teleport things using the Force over long distances. And finally, we can see Force Ghosts now being upgraded to basically doing whatever they want. They can burn down trees or hold lightsabers. So yeah, everything's been upgraded. Now let's take a moment to look at this Force Heal, where people are transferring life force between each other. This is, as far as we know, Kylo's first time using this ability. That he ended up giving Rey so much of his life force that he ended up dying. And he didn't know what he was doing. So he ended up giving all of his life force, and let's take a look at where his hand was. Clearly over her belly. This is obviously giving her life force. This particular life force being given is the fulfillment of the old prophecy. So these two are making a Force baby right here, and we will see the result of that in the future series. This baby will be the balance in the Force. Have you ever noticed that these two resemble the brother and sister from the Clone Wars series? Two halves of the Force keeping balance. We even heard Snoke say, "So much strength, darkness rises, and light to meet it. I warned my young apprentice that as he grew stronger, his equal in the light would rise." So these two Force users are equalizing each other. As one goes further into the dark, another one rises further into the light. So we know that Rey was growing in the woods, doing all these stunts and flips. All the while, Kylo was getting into battles in his real life training, also known as hand-to-hand combat. Kylo was on this mystic journey going through Mustafar and all these other places just to obtain a special box that's going to make him a stronger Sith Lord. Keep in mind that Kylo was gaining more power along the way, so if we look at how strong and connected to the Force Rey was, and Rey was training into the light but still had a touch of dark, as seen when she so easily goes into the cave on the island, then we can see Kylo focusing on training further into the dark, but he still had a touch of light, as seen by him coming back to the light side by the end of the trilogy. These two Force users are two sides of the yin-yang. They are the two Force users that balance each other out. Where have we seen this before? In the Clone Wars, when Anakin was to take the test by the Father to prove that he was the Chosen One, you can see this Force balancing symbol in their courtyard. This is where Anakin passes the test and proves that he was the Chosen One at that time. But Anakin ends up falling really far into the dark side because his mom dies and then Padme dies. So yeah, it gets pretty bad. But if we look at all of the Force users over time, we can see a clear trend. And that is, all the Force users' abilities are increasing in number, and all of their power levels are increasing. Power levels? Power levels isn't a Star Wars thing, that's a Dragon Ball Z thing. So, let's take a look at Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, and we will see how these shows are similar after all. So let's do a recap of the Dragon Ball series. Goku's just a kid growing up in the woods, and then he goes on some adventures and gets trained by Master Roshi. Goku goes on some more adventures, receives some more training from Master Roshi, and then he goes in a tournament. But then Goku goes on some more adventures, and he receives some more training from Korin and Mr. Popo, and then he goes in a tournament. Goku fights some guys, goes get some training from King Kai, fights some more bad guys, and then he gets some training in space, and then fights some guys, and then he transforms into a legendary Super Saiyan. Then Goku goes on some adventures, fights some guys, learns how to do a Super Saiyan 2 transformation, then he goes on some adventures, fights some guys, and then he learns how to do a Super Saiyan 3 transformation. Then after receiving a bunch of training from the most powerful characters, then Goku learns how to transform into a Super Saiyan God. Yeah, that's right, a Super Saiyan God. And no, it doesn't stop there. Goku finds a way to transform as a Super Saiyan God 2 more times, even stronger. So basically at this point, Goku is stronger than every other character in Star Wars. So the Dragon Ball series has been on for many years, and the same kind of one-upmanship has been seen on this show in all the series and movies, and it just continued until Goku learned how to transform into a god. Now that's pretty crazy, right? Because Goku started off as just some kid in the woods just catching fish. Goku went on his adventures, he got stronger, his enemies got stronger, so he got more stronger. And then he learned how to transform, and what beats transformations? More transformations. So you might be thinking to yourself, Star Wars and Dragon Ball are the only 2 long-running shows that you can see this kind of one-upmanship. So let's take a look at another long-running character, Superman. Now if we look at Superman, we can see the same one-upmanship over time. This is an old saying that I found about Superman. Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Superman goes from leaping buildings in a single bound to straight up flying. He flies so fast that he turns back time. And then he just starts shooting lasers from his eyes. The Superman character is getting remade, and every time the new version is one-upping the older version. At one point in the movies, they even called Superman a god. I was like, oh, okay. In case you were wondering who would win in a fight, Superman or Goku, the answer is obviously Goku, hands down. But it wouldn't be a quick fight, because Goku would have some fun with Superman first, like a good old sparring match, and then he would win the fight after he's seen Superman's full strength. So if you look at the trend of Goku and Superman, and if you look at other shows, you're going to start to notice this trend, and longer running series, you're going to notice it more, and that is the one-upmanship. So how is Star Wars going to one-up the previous series? Obviously, now that the father has perished many years ago, this new balanced child is going to become the new god of all of the Force users in the Star Wars galaxy. So that is where Star Wars is going. They got to replace that father character. He was a god character, and there's going to be some Force using gods in the future. So if Disney wanted to, they could probably do this in, I don't know, 3 or 6 movies. So now that you know about the one-upmanship, you're going to start seeing it in other shows more often. You just will.